we know Elon, his speaking style and all that, but I do distinctly remember him saying that the Tesla stock was going to be $4,000 a share. This is when it was like 170 or something before it split and all that. I wish I had listened to him. So my weirdest or my biggest regret is not listening to Elon because he was right.
Yeah, you should have listened. I don't know why you didn't listen to him.
Hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Workplace Weirdness, the non-HR HR podcast where we dive into the strangest office situations and most awkward workplace dramas. I'm your host, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and I'm a former chief culture officer and head of people. I've seen and heard it all, so truly no judgments. This is a safe space to get real and explore the cringy, confusing, or chaotic side of office life. So grab your coffee, kick back in your swivel chair, and listen up. We have an exciting show for you today. There are time zone juggling issues, junior employees being labeled as ungrateful, and a job interview question that dampens a potential employee's interest. But first, I want to welcome to the podcast today, founder and CEO of Podify, Billy Samoa Saleebey. Billy has thrived in a variety of careers, from writing, directing, and producing the award-winning feature film Rolling. He moved into the training and leadership development space working for Solar City, which was then acquired by Tesla, where he became global head of sales and product training. And finally landing in podcasting, he created Insight Out, a podcast where he sits down with remarkable people to uncover their life-changing insights. Billy's understanding of the challenges of podcasting led him to found Podify, a membership-based podcasting service and technology company. Full disclosure, Workplace Weirdness is a Podify member. In fact, it's Billy's people-forward leadership style, which I encounter on a regular basis, that inspired me to ask him to join us today. Billy, it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited, Maya. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm pumped for the conversation.
You know that I started in film and television as well.
I did know that, a little bit of your backstory. So it is amazing what you can learn from your earlier experiences and apply to other things that you do.
Speaking of which, I didn't know that you had such interesting pivots in your career until I had to research you for this podcast. But so in your LinkedIn, for instance, you mentioned that you were at Tesla and you got the call one day that Elon no longer wanted a global head of training. I wanted to hear a little bit about what was that day like?
I love it. What a great first question. I kind of expected it, mostly because I had been a part of 8 riffs before. The only difference was I was the one having to make the decision on who would stay and who would go. And whether it be at Solar City and then at Tesla, there was a lot of times when we had to reduce costs. We had to cut corners. We had to do this. We had to do that. And frankly speaking, I was more than ready to have my ticket called. It's funny because I was just promoted like 4 or 5 months earlier into the global role overseeing all of sales and product training. And so I could say that Elon fired me. That's kind of cool. I mean, I'm not a short list to be on, I guess. But anytime you're working for a company for a long time, especially when you love what you do, you love the people you work with, it's hard, but also it was a new beginning. And that's the way I treated it. Tesla was still very popular across pretty much anyone you talk to. And so I could go get a job most places with that in my resume. But I didn't want to go get another corporate gig. I wanted to start my own thing. And so that's what I decided to do. And I tried to just have an open mind and not obsess over, oh, well, this happened to me. Instead I said this happened for me.
I love that. And I always tell myself that too. It's like if one door closes, a window opens. That philosophy, you're a great demonstration to our listeners that you can still be laid off and thrive after that. I mean, it's like life doesn't end after being let go.
So many people take it personally when you're laid off or say it's my performance. It's something that I've done. When in all reality, there are a lot of factors that go into how that decision is made. And most of the time it's a business decision based on the fact that the company either overhired or mismanaged something to put themselves in a position to need to make a big cut. And so place less of the fault on yourself and move on. I mean, I hate to be crass about it, but you have to, for your own well-being, not ruminate on what happened, because the strong chance is it's not your fault.
Right. I completely agree. And I know it's easy. Sometimes it feels like we're just saying that, but I do think that from the side of the managers and the executive team, it's usually not related to any of the human qualities of this person. So interesting though, that you post about it so publicly on LinkedIn, and I almost feel like you were proud of that change.
Yeah, in a lot of ways I am. And you know this, I believe in radical transparency across life. I just think that the more you are open in general, good things happen. So I think don't run away or hide from the moments of life that could be considered a failure or could be considered a low point. That's human. People relate to human, and I don't want to hide those things.
Yeah, I love that. So, I always like to ask people, if they're looking at their career, are there mistakes that you made early on that taught you big lessons and paid off?
I thought you were going to say lessons that I learned that I wish I didn't do.
Well, so that's a way to learn, right?
Ways. So, yeah, there are some definite lessons that I learned early on. One is, and I didn't coin this term, but I interviewed somebody who wrote a book called Rookie Smarts.
Okay.
And so Liz Wiseman, she's a Thinkers 50. She's super well known in her world of leadership. And she wrote this amazing book called Rookie Smarts. And I've interviewed her a couple times. But Rookie Smarts stands out because the whole premise is that actually people who don't have preconceived knowledge end up performing a lot of times at a better level than those who have so much knowledge and so much experience that they then become a bit more rigid. They think they know it all. So when I got into training, I wasn't trained on training. I didn't know how to put on a training. But because of that, I really went after the experience. I don't want to create a boring corporate training. I want to make something that's fun. And I knew inherently that if I made it memorable, it would be more powerful. So things like, instead of doing normal role playing, we did American Idol, where it was like Randy, Simon, and Paula. This is back in the day, American Idol, early days. And people would do role playing, and then the trainers up at the front of the room would be Randy, Simon, and Paula, giving that feedback, that constructive feedback.
I love it.
Or doing like Family Feud, where it's like we have one side of the room against the other side of the room, and we had this really charismatic trainer who was the host. And it just, I have video of this, Maya, that
I would love to see this. Believe it or not, this is incredibly interesting to me.
Oh my God. it is so much electric energy. I mean, there was one time where we went to a tiebreaker and one team won, and it was like the whole office knew something was happening in the training room. And my point is that I didn't try to follow a particular script. I let the experience lead the path. Because of that, I got a lot of promotions. I got new opportunities. I became the global head of onboarding at Tesla. That then led to me becoming the global head of sales and product training, because early on I made some decisions to not do sort of a cookie cutter, boring, stale corporate training, but instead do something that was more memorable. And I'll just say this one last thing. One of the people who attended my trainings ended up being the daughter of somebody who became like the CRO of Solar City. And because of that, he goes, I heard about your trainings. My daughter attended. I want to know more. That elevated me. You never know. You never know who's observing, seeing. And I think the other thing is positive reinforcement, looking for those things. So doing feedback, soliciting and asking for feedback. That's a really important thing. I learned this at Tesla, actually. It's, we are naturally hardwired to resist feedback because it's a threat. And our threat response pushes feedback away from us inherently, physiologically. But if we could create a culture of feedback, and there's this great neuroscience researcher named David Rock, and he wrote a book called Your Mind at Work, who talks about this phenomenon. And his whole premise when he spoke to us at Tesla, and I didn't know I was doing this when I did this earlier, but I was seeking feedback. I was asking for feedback. And that feedback does two things. One, it allows you to make changes that will help it become better, which therefore makes you more confident that what you're doing is the right thing. And it'll reinforce the things you're doing well. And so going back to David Rock, the idea is people don't want unsolicited feedback, but you can create a culture where if you constantly ask for feedback and it's part of the culture, which at Podify, we talk about feedback is a gift. Say that. And we send this to our clients. One of the first things we send is feedback is a gift because it is. It helps you refine what you're doing, make you better at what you do, tells you what you're doing right, and then gives you the confidence to step up and continue to make forward progress. And so that's the way I think confidence is developed. And then the last thing I'll share is you feel more confident if you've done it a few times. That's how you start to really build confidence across anything that you're doing, whether it be athletics, business, speaking on stage. You do it more, you gain the confidence.
Absolutely. So you have to just put yourself out there. Yeah. So there's a question that I ask every guest, and it's, what is your weirdest workplace moment? So anything that's embarrassing, maybe that happened, or something that you really learned a huge lesson from, or just something. What's the weirdest workplace moment for you?
I have a lot, and most of them involve Zoom. So at Solar City, this is before Zoom became a verb.
Right.
Okay, this is 2015, and most people didn't even know Zoom was a thing. And so I share that as a precursor to the weirdest moment, and there's a few. So the weirdest moment, and this is a little graphic, but it's safe for TV somewhat. We did big events. One of the things that I did was I did the transition from Solar City to Tesla. So I was up on stage. In fact, one of the things that I decided to do was I said, what would Elon do? So I was running this event, and to start the event, you could just start. There's a lot of people remotely attending. There was a lot of people in person. It was at one of the main warehouses for Solar City where they had all the solar panels and all that. And they had these big, huge doors that would allow trucks to come in. And I'm like, well, this is cool. And then we put stadium seating all around, and it was awesome. A big stage. I'm like, how do we start this? So I started it by playing Thunderstruck from the band AC/DC. And I drove a Tesla Model S onto stage, and I got out and I did the presentation. Now, here's where we get weird. And I didn't know this till after the fact. Some of the people that could be seen were doing things they shouldn't be doing. In particular, there was one guy who was on the toilet grimacing while going to the restroom.
Oh, my
I think
Lord.
that probably is the weirdest moment. But then, there's some other weird moments, like working at Tesla. This isn't weird as much as cool. I was at the Tesla facility when they first landed the SpaceX rocket back on the ground. Wow. And, it was Tesla, so it's kind of like a sister company to SpaceX. But being there, you felt like you were at SpaceX. I mean, everybody's watching the screens, and it was like a really big deal. Everybody stopped what they were doing, and you didn't know. You were holding your breath, but then it just landing a rocket back on the ground, it just hadn't been done before. So it was just a really memorable, it's one of those moments. And then,
right, like a sense of pride, basically, as you're standing there with other people who are in this shared experience. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just this shared experience. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And because Elon did all hands at the Tesla factory, and I worked at the Tesla factory. And so we know Elon, his speaking style and all that, but I do distinctly remember him saying that the Tesla stock was going to be $4,000 a share. This is when it was like 170 or something before it split and all that. I wish I had listened to him. So my weirdest or my biggest regret is not listening to Elon, because he was right. They say don't bet on Elon. I mean,
Because it's hard right now.
yeah, it's a totally different conversation now.
It's totally funny because it's true. Like there are different stages in thinking about Elon Musk and what he represents. But anyhow, the point is great. And, you should have listened. I don't know why you didn't listen to him.
Hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing and being so open with us. So now, before we get to our listener questions, it's time to stay up to date with the week in work, our take on a recent news story that might affect how we work or how we think about work life. So Forbes published an article predicting tech hiring trends for the rest of 2025. And the article predicts that the U.S. tech job market is set to recover after last year, which was filled with many layoffs and strategic shifts due to AI. However, about 81% of U.S. tech hiring managers are planning to hire abroad, reflecting the industry's shift towards global talent acquisition, all the while intensifying the competition for available positions in the U.S. Corporations are also focusing on outsourcing and utilizing contractors. So, Billy, I know that your business is not purely tech, but certainly you outsource and hire globally. So I just want to hear your take on the current hiring landscape.
It's interesting. I mean, and to the article's point, there's the AI component, but then there's also the globalization and global workforce. It's not a new thing, but it's getting more and more common to find people in other regions for a variety of reasons. I think, yes, there's the cost component, and I don't want to say that that's not a factor. It is, but I would say it's velocity. It's momentum. And because when you have people across multiple time zones, you have more coverage and more ability to get things done on an execution standpoint. I use that word execution very deliberately. It's an execution thing more than anything else. So if I'm looking at the landscape over the next 12 to 24 months, there will continue to be more global workers hired. Think of it more as people that are being hired are getting stuff done. They're doing tasks versus outcome drivers. And I'm not saying that you can't have outcome drivers in other regions. You can, but if you're looking at just the bulk of what's being hired, is they're getting things accomplished. They're doing specific tasks. But what really, if I'm somebody trying to make myself more attractive, it's give yourself an opportunity to lead, innovate, and strategize. If you could lead, innovate, and strategize, you're setting yourself up not only for a global workforce economy, but for an AI workforce economy. I mean, I just interviewed the author of this book called Audacious, which is a great book. Mark Schaefer, great guy. This specific book talks about in order to survive in the AI world, you have to out-human AI. And so one of the things he talks about, and it ties back to the title of your show, is it's like being a little bit weird, being a little bit crazy, being not afraid. I mean, AI kind of struggles, and it struggles in a few areas, but it still doesn't possess the human characteristics or attributes that we all relate to, and to allow ourselves to be present with other humans. And so I think those who can really flex into emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and empathy, all of those things are leadership traits, in my opinion. So I think that's a big piece of it. The other piece is innovation. And while I do think AI, learning language, learning models, these help with ideation, they help you get a head start, but they don't finish the race. The other thing that I'll say in closing is that when we think about global workforce and how it plays into today's economy, we shouldn't necessarily avoid the realities of it existing, because then that's putting your head in the sand and saying it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening, but it is happening. And so how do you find a way to work really, really well in that environment? Because then you set yourself up to be a unique it factor.
Absolutely.
I am exceptional at working with AI, or I'm exceptional with working at global workforce. If you thrive in that environment, imagine how attractive you are to people who want to build a global workforce.
This was great. Thank you so much for all that insight. I think that's really wonderful that you were able to share and sort of give some insider descriptions of how you think about this. But now, Billy, it's time to go on a quick break. When we come back, we have a question from a global team leader who, between New York City, Tokyo, and London, simply cannot find a workable meeting time. Been there. See you after the break. I was Chief Culture Officer. It was my mission to create a workplace where employees feel supported and valued. And there's no profession where that's more important right now than in education. That's why school district leaders are loving Alpaca, an innovative and award-winning employee engagement platform designed specifically for K-12 schools. It all starts with one simple question: how are you doing? Alpaca's simple, delightful pulse surveys let teachers share real, honest feedback while giving school leaders actionable insights. Teachers love how easy it feels to take this pulse survey every month. No 1 to 5 scales, just quick, meaningful feedback for principals to know where to celebrate and where to focus so that they can create great team culture. Teachers love feeling heard, principals love the insights, and districts love keeping their teachers. Every employee wants to feel heard, seen, and valued. And when teachers feel supported, schools thrive. Alpaca is transforming workplaces for educators across the country. Learn more at alpacapax.com and see how modern employee engagement can make school the happiest place to work. Welcome back to Workplace Weirdness. I'm here with Podify founder and CEO, Billy Samoa Saleebey. Billy, to continue the conversation about the challenges of overseas workforces, we've got a question for you about the surprisingly complicated issue of scheduling a meeting. Let's check it out. Hello, Workplace Weirdness. I'm a project manager leading a global team of 10 people spread across New York, London, and Tokyo. One of the toughest challenges I face is coordinating meetings across a wide array of time zones. Earlier this year, I sent out a Google poll to figure out what times would work best for everyone, hoping to rotate the schedule to be as fair as possible. But despite my best efforts, someone always feels inconvenienced. Our Tokyo team, for instance, often has to join meetings at 8 p.m., while our colleagues in New York are forced to jump on calls as early as 6 a.m. Everyone's willing to make the sacrifice, but I can feel the frustration building. Some team members aren't able to contribute fully because they're too tired or distracted, and the lack of real-time engagement is starting to affect the team dynamic. I've tried using asynchronous communication and recorded meetings to keep everyone in the loop, but it's just not the same as having everyone present for a live discussion. I understand that this is part of the reality of managing a global team, but I really want to do better. Boost team morale, foster a sense of camaraderie, and make sure everyone feels included. Do you have any advice for managing these time zone challenges while keeping the team engaged and connected? There's got to be a lot of people grappling with this time zone issue. Billy, what do you have to say to this listener?
Yeah, this is right up my alley because I not only deal with this today with my team at Podify, but I had the same almost exact situation. I had a team in Japan and China, all APAC region. I had a team in Europe, so in various parts of Europe, so the EMEA time zone, right? And then North America. And I think anyone that has had that situation where you want or need to get everybody on the same call, you have to account for the variables of what that looks like. So some of this comes down to work culture and what their normal work time is, and some of it comes down to compromise and sacrifice. And what I found to work best is you want to be empathetic. And I think all roads lead back to empathy. It's feeling for, okay, what might it feel like to have a meeting at 11 at night or early in the morning, but also it's communication, right? So I would talk to him and be like, okay, based on time zones, here's what I'm thinking. I don't love the poll idea, to be honest, because then if somebody puts what they want and they don't get it, it feels like, well, they decided to not do what I want. So I don't know. I just don't like
They
that.
read into it.
I'd rather do, they read into it. I'd rather do some reconnaissance and be like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. We have maybe a smaller team that needs to be on from this region or a bigger team. And so you do play into account, okay, well, the majority of the team is here, knowing what time zones you're accounting for, what might be, and have a proposal. So for me, it was like, I think it was 7 a.m. on the Pacific, and then it was like 10 on East Coast, and then it was like afternoon in Europe, and then it was later at night at APAC, and then we switch it where we do later at night in North America, early morning in APAC. So I follow a framework like this. Number one, acknowledge. So if it's early in the morning, acknowledge, hey, I know some of you had to wake up early, or it's an early start for you. And by the way, it's also a fun thing to put into the chat. Hey, let us know what time of day it is. Where are you at? What time of day it is? But then acknowledge and say, I know some of you, it's pretty late. It's 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for taking time. I know this isn't a normal working hour. That goes a long way, because what they don't want is for it to be you're oblivious to it.
Right. It's
that
both
never
acknowledged, but also it's like a sense of credibility. Like you are really putting in a little bit of extra for this team. Like I think it actually bolsters them a little bit as well. Just making them understand that is so appreciated, and then it's going to be worth it for them. That's another thing. Is also make that meeting as engaging as possible, so that they don't feel like they just wasted their time.
100% agree with you. That's the third thing. So the second thing you're good. Yeah. So you hit it out of the park. Yeah. The second thing is all about making it in something that is valuable. And so if they feel like it's a meeting for meeting's sake, they're going to resent you.
Yeah.
They're going to feel like, why am I here? And so the preparation, the thoughtfulness, the organization, having not just an agenda, but a very well thought out agenda, and that incorporates them and that makes them feel like they're a part of it. Actually have pre-planned people to participate. And you got to also remember that you don't want to take too many withdrawals of people's goodwill. So don't overbook meetings, both in the duration, but also in the frequency. And then the last thing I'll say is I do still believe that asynchronous communication is very, very valuable. So Loom, Zoom work really well, and I don't think you should ignore doing those, but it's a supplement. It shouldn't take away from ever having the in-person. You should do that as well.
So, first of all, thank you. That's so comprehensive. But I did want to say that in our company, there was a time where it existed in one place. So, and why do I say that? Because if you do have that, if you have a headquarters that has a time zone, you can probably, taking the job, and let's say you live outside that time zone, they are on some level still hooked to that time zone as being the ideal time zone for most of the people. In the handbook, we actually printed that. We run mostly on New York time zone. So people came in with that understanding that they were working for first an American-based company that was headquartered in New York City.
Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that. That's really cool to hear how you handle it.
I hope that we helped this listener by giving him some actionable ways to both keep interest and also to think about what to do. Now, our next listener question is about a slightly dissatisfied junior employee who tried to have an honest conversation with their boss and ended up being labeled as ungrateful. Yikes. Okay, here we go. Hello, Workplace Weirdness. In my current role as a sales enablement associate, I joined the team excited to enhance my skills in training and facilitation. However, more and more, I'm beginning to feel unsatisfied with the work my boss is giving me. I understand that every role involves some busy work, but my days are increasingly filled with administrative tasks, things like organizing spreadsheets, booking meetings, and managing CRM data. These tasks often get offloaded onto me. About a month ago, I decided to have a conversation with my manager about this. I told him that I felt like I had a lot to learn from him and a lot more to contribute to the company. I said that I was happy to help with the lower level tasks, but I'd also like to get involved in more meaningful projects. I suggested areas like helping streamline the onboarding process for new sales reps or working on creating sales training content. He didn't take this feedback very well. In fact, he seemed almost defensive, as though my feedback was a criticism of his management style. One time, when he didn't know I was also on a call, I overheard him telling another coworker about the feedback I had given him. And he said to the coworker, "Do you believe what she told me?" and proceeded to describe me as overly ambitious and ungrateful. I felt embarrassed and shocked that he shared our private, confidential feedback conversation with another teammate at my level. Since then, I've been wondering if there's a better way I could have approached this conversation or if I misread the situation altogether. How should you give feedback without criticizing your manager or undermining their leadership? Whoa, that's a loaded one. Thoughts, Billy?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this one. I love this question. My first thought is going back to that feedback, right? People don't want unsolicited feedback. Leaders are the same. And so effectively what you did is you challenged his identity, which can trigger a bit of a defensive posture. Like you have put him on defense. I'm not saying you're wrong for having those feelings, but I think you could probably do everything you did and get the same results by extracting the part about what you don't like doing. He probably already knows that, right? He's probably an insecure manager. You damaged his ego, but right or wrong, and your intentions are in the right place. You can't change what's been done, but for future reference and for anybody that maybe is in a similar boat, when interacting with your managers, it's not that you never give them feedback, but when you do give feedback, hopefully it's feedback that they've actually asked for. Again, going back to creating a culture of feedback, because then it becomes you being eager and excited as opposed to ungrateful and resistant to doing tasks that maybe or maybe not is part of your job description. But where you want to navigate to is make yourself indispensable in the areas that you thrive and you want to be working. So for example, if you want to do more training and you want to do more sales enablement and do some other things that maybe get you more excited, suggest and volunteer to do some things that could showcase how good you are at doing them and then knock it out of the park. Do such a good job that the way this leader will think is, I don't want this person working on these menial tasks, because that takes you away from doing what he's seeing that you're really good at. And so to me, the solve is pretty simple, is in the future, try to avoid the things that people would be defensive and make it more proactive and make it more about what you can do.
Yeah, I love a lot of the things that you said, because you actually said it with a nicer spin than I was going to say. Because my first take of reading this was maybe what the manager felt is that someone's complaining about the grunt work of a lower level position. But the sense is that sometimes people early on in their career, that there's a sense of not understanding that you kind of have to put in some of those tasks that are just not fun. And actually, believe it or not, that's one way to make yourself indispensable, but it's also a trust building exercise. In other words, the more you're able to do some of those and to perfect those tasks and to be someone that people can rely on is the way to build the trust to get bigger tasks rather than to ask for it. Again, not taking away your time from the things you need to get done. Something that I really love that you said, though, it's about when you're speaking and when you're trying to give this feedback, it's more about what you want to do in a positive way rather than complaining about the negative. I think that that's going to help. I do want to say, though, that I don't love this manager. I mean, I don't like the fact that he complained about the behavior. That is totally out of line. So I agree with you there, listener, that that should have not been said to anybody, because you don't really share your dirty laundry.
Yeah, don't gossip.
Yeah, no gossip. That's just not fair. You phrased it as that they might be a little bit insecure. That may be the case. Anyway, we want you to be smart around the person and whoever your manager is, right? We can complain about the fact that he or she didn't behave nicely, but I don't think that changes the way you need to approach it.
Right. Your reputation precedes you. A guy that I used to work with, this guy was a manager on the East Coast at Solar City, and everybody kept on talking about him because when we do trainings in the East Coast, he would come and speak to the class and everybody loved him. And his reputation preceded him. You want your reputation to precede you, and you want other people to be singing your praises and talking about how awesome you are, that puts you in really good position to move up. I'm grateful that I was promoted a lot. I've never asked for a promotion, not one time. And I believe the reason that is the wins spoke for themselves. And I'm not trying to brag, but like I had enough good things happen where I broke the record in company sales. Okay, you should probably be a trainer. Okay, the training team's getting all these positive reviews. You should probably be a manager. Broke the record for most sales as a team. Okay, you should be the VP of sales. Each part of my career happened because of documented success that was visible and shared. And so what can you do to get the wins?
I think the word share is the most important piece of that.
Yeah.
In other words, because what you did was you didn't keep it to yourself. You were helping others to lift them up, so that lifted you up. In other words, I know it sometimes sounds cheesy when we talk like this, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It's just so true. So I love this, and I learned a lot from the way, you think about things as well. So let's hope this listener and her manager can move forward with some new understandings. And now we'll move from one awkward conversation to another. Every week we cover one question addressing the kind of cringeworthy office event that can make you want to pivot to podcasting. This week's cringeworthy question involves a job interview that's going along just great until questions spring up about showering. Okay, let's dive in. Dear Workplace Weirdness, I recently had an interview for a job as an executive assistant, and everything seemed to be going great. I was referred to the position by a friend of mine who had worked with this executive before, so I felt pretty confident going in. The company is an advertising agency that specializes in beauty products, and recently they launched a commercial that featured a woman in the shower. Towards the end of the interview, as a hypothetical question, the executive asked me if I'd be willing to be in the shower in this commercial. I felt uncomfortable immediately, so I tried to redirect and said, while I don't love being on camera, I'd be happy to help source actresses to be in the commercial. Then he followed up and pressed me by saying, if the company really needed this, would you be willing to be in the commercial? To get through the rest of the interview, I laughed off the question and simply said yes. He ended up offering me the job, and I took it, but I felt uncomfortable. It feels really inappropriate that he would ask me that, and I'm torn about whether I should back out of the job. Should I just let it go, or is this a red flag? So, some employers don't know when to end a job interview. It was all going so well. What's your take, Billy?
I mean, this is definitely a workplace weirdness moment for sure. My immediate take is that is very bizarre, and red flags would be going off for sure. If your spidey sense is telling you it's off, then it usually is. I'm a big believer in clarifying questions. So asking like, what do you mean? And like kind of let them describe it more. I mean, you can't go back and change your response, but anytime you're in a situation where something seems off, get the clarification, because one thing I learned from one of the mentors that I had at Tesla, and I think he actually learned this from Liz Wiseman, who was one of his bosses, was this idea of assume positive intent. So he may not have meant it in a awkward way. It sounds very awkward, and I don't want to excuse him, but he may not have. Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think this applies across the board, is try to assume positive intent. That's for your own benefit more than anything else. Because then a lot of times people actually do have the right intentions, but poor articulation. In this particular case, I would have just said, well, what do you mean? Just so I understand better. Like, this is one of the things we learned at Tesla is like, you could say, just so I could better understand, can you explain the commercial or what would be involved? Let them explain. And yeah, I mean, I think you kind of laughed it off, and I can see why we laugh when we're uncomfortable sometimes. It's just, that is a way to ease into a response. But I wouldn't give in until you fully understand. I'm more interested in the leader and how that person could do that in an interview setting. and be okay with it. There's the HR component of it. It definitely crosses the line. If the tone and everything else you observed cross the line, I think you have to have some personal boundaries and commit to those personal boundaries. You could set them clearly or state them clearly in the interview, and then other times as well to maybe a third party. If this person is doubling down or tripling down in this case about this very bizarre request, I think you got to hold your ground.
Right.
Because otherwise they're going to see how far they could push it. And you don't want to inadvertently be in a compromised position.
Right. And so again,
What do you think?
I definitely thank you. I'll tell you.
This
I'll tell you. So a lot of the things that you said, and I want to add. First of all, if her instinct is telling her something, I definitely think we got to listen to that. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Gift of Fear. And it's funny because I usually always talk about how to feel the fear and do it anyway. But there are instances where you got to actually tap into your gift of fear. It's a gift because your body is telling you something. It's giving you these senses to protect you. So first of all, I want the listener to really tap in and to see if there is something there. I think that the response that she gave is showing me that there was discomfort, and that actually what I love about your idea of reframing it and asking, what did you mean? What did you mean? That's a way to take back your power. That's actually a way to assert your boundaries, which maybe you didn't feel like you had in that situation. I mean, it's an interview, so it's not like, there is a bit of a power dynamic there. But if this ever happens again, you would be able to utilize that as a way to slow down. In reframing it, it kind of slows it down. You can have time to sort of really understand, and then you can assess: is this person actually only testing for loyalty? Because that's a different situation. Maybe they are saying, like, are you willing to just be like the most loyal employee in the world? However, also what we missed though is that this listener got recommended to this job from a friend. And I actually think that that's also a really valuable resource here. Ask your friend, does this person have like a history of saying inappropriate things? Is he a little touchy-feely? Definitely check into that. I would love to hear if your friend has never experienced this, if this is like completely alien. I also think it's not too late to continue the conversation. She could call up and say, I've had this question rattling around in my brain since we had the interview. And if you don't feel like you can, maybe that should be the barometer inside.
Spidey sense it is a powerful thing. Don't ignore it.
Absolutely.
It's usually right.
And I just love that sentiment because I think people need to hear sometimes that it's not too late. We do this thing to ourselves where we think like, oh, I said yes to the job, so now I got to take it. I'm locked in. Well, you're not locked in. You always have options. I'm happy that you wrote in, listener, and I hope that we helped you today and that you can figure this out, that you can navigate out of this uncomfortable and definitely weird situation. So
it was definitely weird. One of the chief revenue officer at Solar City, when he recruited me, and then on many other occasions, he reminded me of this very powerful principle, which is winners have options. We have way more options than we readily realize. I think people who remember that and embrace that set themselves up for more opportunity that they maybe otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, I like it because it's like winners have options, as in if you've won in the past, you have options.
True.
So keep those options open in your head always, because that will lead you to more success at the end of the day. So I love that. Wonderful,
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Billy. From time zone chaos to inappropriate interviews, it's clear that nowadays we all need a place to go for advice. So thank goodness for podcasting and for podcasters like you. That's our show today. I want to thank you, Billy, for sharing your leadership insights with us. Any last thoughts before we go our separate ways, Billy?
I just loved having this conversation. I love that we could talk about real situations and how to navigate through those. And, because sometimes you forget that you do have the ability to make decisions about how you approach the things that happen in your work life. And those decisions help to dictate how you thrive in your work life. And the more you think about it consciously and not be afraid to ask, the more empowered you are and the more ability you have to be your best self at work. So super, super inspiring And thanks again for the opportunity, Maya. I think the world of you is awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. And I just love that. And yes, I completely agree. And the better your work life, the better your life, right?
True.
Exactly. So
Love it.
thanks again, Billy. So we'll be back soon with more workplace weirdness. If you've enjoyed our dive into the strange and funny side of office life, don't forget to subscribe. And if you've got some weirdness in the workplace, drop us an email at info@workplace-weirdness.com or leave us a voice message at speakpipe.com/workplace weirdness. We might feature your question in an upcoming episode. Until next time, this is Maya Kadar Kovalsky reminding you to embrace the quirks and make the most out of the office chaos. In the meantime, keep working and whenever possible, stay weird. Today's show was produced by me, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and Felicia Wang, and written by Dana Burnell. Thanks to Billy Samoa Saleebey and the rest of the team at Podify who helped engineer this episode. Thanks also to Billy Samoa Saleebey for joining us on today's episode. And thanks to you for listening to Workplace Weirdness. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for another breakdown of all things weird from a workplace near you.